Hello and welcome to Alan's Ancestors. In the last video we showed you how to put leaves on your tree. In this video we will show you how to put blossoms on your tree. How are we going to do that? We're going to look through newspaper archives online, we're going to look through Navy records, we're going to dip our toe in those, and also merchant Navy records, passenger lists and all that sort of thing. So we're going to build on what census records have told us and hopefully find out much more. Let's start by looking at newspapers. I'm going to look online, of course, but it's always worthwhile visiting your local library or archive to see what they have and how you can search for anything they have there. They may have digitized them, or it might be the old-fashioned way with microfilm, microfiches, that sort of thing. But they may have articles, newspapers, whatever, that are not available online yet. It's always worthwhile investigating that route. The first one I'm going to look at is newspapers.com, which is associated with ancestry.com. And they have all sorts of newspapers from around the world. You can see using this drop-down list here which countries newspapers have been gathered from. The other site we'll be using is Find My Past, and they have a link here with you can look for newspapers, and they are tied in with the British Library, who have their own website, the British Newspaper Archive. I'll be looking at all three of those. And you can see that some newspapers are available in some sites and not others, and it is a question of using whichever one suits you best. Start with newspapers.com. They have their own subscription, which you can pay monthly or in 6 monthly chunks. If you're with ancestry.com, you do get some of the features as part of that package, depending on which package you choose. We are looking at newspapers because, like I said, this is putting blossoms on the tree. We're finding out even more about the person in between census records, in between births, marriages, and deaths. It'll be bringing people to life, if not literally, then figuratively, and looking at the full picture of the person. There are two methods that I use to look through newspapers. One is using a certain set date and time, say a wedding or a death or something of that nature. And the other one is just what you might want to call a shotgun approach. Just look for everything, just put in a search for the person's name or even just their surname and just see what comes up. So let's start off with the first way I mentioned. And we're going to look for any marriage announcement for George Francis Monk and Ellen Blanche Crook. Now, we know they were married in 1896 in Southampton. We know their names, and so we can use those parameters to search for a marriage announcement. Now, when we first put in the names, we can see that some answers appear in the body below, and then that reduces when we put in the date and also the location. And it would appear that there's nothing to show. Now, one thing we might want to double check is the actual date they were married. And if we look, we can see that they were married on December the 25th, Christmas Day, in 1896. So the chances are it didn't actually make the newspapers, if it did at all, until January 1897. So that's where we're going to look next. And still there's no result. Now, that might mean that there was never a marriage notice, but let's throw the dice again. This time we're going to leave out the first names and just put in there Monk and Crook. And now we do have a result, and we can see that the Hampshire Advertiser reported that on the 25th of December, George Monk of Eastleigh married Ellen Crook, second daughter of James Crook. So that's given us another piece of information, which if you didn't have already, you now know that the father's name was James Crook and that Ellen had an elder sister. And we can see that James Crook was of Glebe Road, Southampton. There's little bits of information there which you can use to dig a bit further, see what you get. You sometimes get repeats of results. So if the newspaper had two editions or if it reported the same thing the following day, as it does here. So the next thing we're going to try and find with a name, date and place is see if there's anything to do with the death of George Monk, who died in 1926 in Taunton. in Somerset. So let's look for that now. And of course, we're going to put the name and the date. And we're going to go England and then narrow it down to Somerset. And there is a result for him right there. So let's click on that and see what details we can find. As we can see, it's quite a large article, and we have a lot of floral tributes, and we can see the names of the people who gave the floral tributes. We can see the people who were at the funeral, and this is great, great information that you'd never get anywhere else. I mean, look at this. So if we read through this, we can not only see the names of family members and the families they married into, and of course this is great information. If you've never seen this before, for whoever you're looking for, then this is a lot of information, and you can break this down and study each person, see what you know about them already, and if you want to dig deeper, then that's a great path to follow. But all from this one article. And we can also see how respected and liked he was. He was a member of various clubs. We've got the Master Butchers Association, the Constitutional Club, the Goose Club. Now, I didn't know what that was, but I realized it was you pay money in per month and you get save up to buy a goose at Christmas. Yeah. So, yes, this is a great example of putting blossoms on the tree using a newspaper article. And by way of comparison, I am now going to search in Find My Past's Search Newspapers section and see what we can get for a similar notice, this time for my great-grandfather Frederick Joseph Gage, who died in Southampton in 1933. And there's nothing there at all. I have tried again with a slightly different method, but again, there was nothing for him on Find My Past search. Now let's look at the British Newspaper Archive. It probably will be the same result because the Find My Past search goes through the British Newspaper Archive, but we'll try it anyway. As you can see, you do need to narrow it down by these filters on the left-hand side. Unlike the newspapers.com, we directly put in a year. It's not as easy with this one, but sometimes it's worth it. And let's look at this. And I can't see anything coming up now. I could narrow it down by place, and let's see what happens. But again, alas, nothing at all. I'm going to try again in newspapers.com, and it might be that they have the digital rights to certain newspapers that Find My Past and the British Newspaper Archive does not. But let's find out. And it would appear that the Southern Daily Echo did have an article about this. So let's have a look what that says. So straight away we get some useful information. We get to know where he was buried. We also can see that he was a shore boatswain for the White Star Line until he retired about 3 years ago. So he was 76 when he died, so he was working till he was 73. It tells you who the mourners were, and they were Mr. and Mrs. Moore, his son-in-law and daughter, Miss Nellie Gage, his daughter, his brother T, or Edward Gage, I guess T is Teddy, and his sister-in-law, Mrs. Hayward, and Mrs. Purnell, his sister-in-law, and of course Mrs. Lovelace, daughter-in-law, that's my grandmother, who was remarried by that time, and Mrs. Easter, his granddaughter. And you can see there that the reads include a full anchor from the White Star stevedores, and tributes from Holland and Wolff, where he worked, and also the Mill Tavern. It's always great finding these articles, and once you do, you get a lot of information from them, which you can transcribe, or whatever way you want to record it. You can also, in both newspapers.com and all the other places you can look at digital copies online, you can what they call clip the title, and I'll show you how to do that now. And so what we do is we select the piece we want to clip, and then we go over here, add to this, give it a title, FGAG1 funeral. I'm going to call this and save it, and that is saved. Where is it saved? Well, it's saved to the newspapers.com website, so you can go back and forth and look at your clippings. You can also print download, which is a great thing to do. You can then save that in clippings in your files on your PC or whatever it is you use. And on this PDF, you can see the details on the top of the page. And it's a nice clear image as well. What I do is I also transcribe them, and highlight anything that I've found or anything I need to find. And so now we're going to go for the second method, which, as you may recall from what I said, was just putting the name within the person's lifespan and see what you get. It's quite often good to narrow it down with a location, but let's just see what happens with this. For this, and to show you the different way you can search for things, I'm going to use Find My Past, and I'm going to put Frederick Gange in here. And without using any filters, you can see that I get a lot of results here, or 93. So I'm going to add some filters now. And I'm going to choose County of Publication as Hampshire. And we still get quite a few results. So let's just scroll down until we think we find something that might be him. So we're looking for something within his lifespan. And that's 1857 to 1933. And we have found this here. Drunkenness. Frederick Gange, a seaman, was charged with drunkenness in Poundtree Lane the previous evening and fined 10 shillings and costs. Well, he was a sailor on shore leave, so, you know. And now I'm going to use the Find My Past clip selection tool, which is similar to the newspapers.com. But because I have an account with Find My Past, I can actually attach this to Frederick Joseph's profile. We're going to choose the part that we want and clip selection. And it says, what would you like to do? Save to add to tree. And we're going to select the person. Is Frederick Joseph Gange. Where are you? Where are you? There he is. 1857 to 1933. And add. And then if we go to his profile, we can see that it has been added. There he is. And we look at media. There it is. It's the Hampshire Advertiser. And if we look further down in these results, this is probably him. Let's have a look. We can see this is a license passing to Frederick Joseph Gange. The license for the pub, the Royal Standard. Now, there are a few Royal Standards, or there were a few Royal Standards in Southampton. And this one is the one that got renamed the Anglesey Tavern in the 1890s, which is the time we're talking about here. And the Anglesey Tavern, going by census records and birth certificates, is where they lived. It was 1 Anglesey Terrace, and so those things match up on a line. So let's clip the selection, add it to his tree. So that was newspapers and how to search for them in the 2 different ways, pinpointing a time, date, and place, and also a search under someone's name. Now let's look at travel and migration records, and we're going to go again to Find My Past. And these, I believe you'll find, are linked with the National Archives. And I may have mentioned it before, but I will be doing a separate video later on about the National Archives. But for now, let's have a look at the travel and migration records. Okay, so we're going to look for Nellie Gange, see if she travelled around. And the only details we're going to put in here are Nellie Gange's name, because we don't know A, if she travelled around, and B, the dates on which she did so. So let's just see what comes up, and we can see there are 17 results, and let's go and have a look what they are. Okay, straight off the bat, we can see that there are 5 for Nellie Gange, and we can see there's one with the year of birth of 1897, and the one above it and below. Let's have a look at the 3 that are grouped together there. So the first one is an incoming passenger list, and we can see that it was 14th of December, 1960, and her address is given as 68 Alloway Avenue, Paulsgrove, Portsmouth, Hampshire, and that the ship's name was Manchester Port. And it said that departure port was Miami, Florida. Now, if you remember way back on the first video, if you saw that one, there was a rumor, rather than verified fact, that my dad had an auntie who lived in Florida and had an orange farm. Well, maybe the first part of that was true, and maybe this is going to verify it. Who knows? Let's look at the original document, and above here at the top are the ship's details. And the date of arrival is December, 10th of December, back in time for Christmas with a nice tan, I guess. And there she is at the bottom, Nellie Gage, and port of embarkation, Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, and there's her address again, and it says that she's retired. So this is all interesting stuff. And we know that in 1960, she went to Florida. Very nice. Okay, so now the next one actually has her year of birth, 1897, and Nellie S. Gage. So let's have a look at it. This time it's outgoing. So it says here she was a Taylor S. And it actually has a date of birth, 5th of November, 1897. So that's correct. And it looks like they sailed from Glasgow. So she would have had to travel from Portsmouth up to Glasgow. And we can see here also, when did she leave? In June. She actually left in June. So she spent nearly 6 months in Florida. I would possibly visiting her sister. That's to be verified yet. And as we can see, there's a date of birth, and she's single, and 68 Elway Avenue again. Taylor S. Well, on the way home, she said she was retired. Maybe she made up her mind to retire while she was in Florida. Who knows? Okay, but this is very interesting. So she spent 6 months, or nearly 6 months, in Florida in 1960. Now, this last one here, Nellie Susan Gage, yeah, that must be her. So let's have a look at that. Was she born in 1960? I doubt it. Birth date, 14th of December 1960. Well, that's actually the arrival date of the ship. So I guess the transcribers, for some reason, put that there. Not sure why. Anyway, let's view original record. And here we have it, Nellie Susan Gage. And this is, I don't know if you remember the days of before computers, and we went on an aeroplane and you filled out the piece of paper as a declaration when you went in and came out the country. This is the same sort of thing, but for a ship. So there you go. That's her handwriting. Very nice to see. So now we're going to have a look into Royal Naval Records. We kind of dip our toes into it, really. I'm going to do a fuller version of this when I do my grandfather's case study. But for now, we're going to do his nephew, Reginald Charles Green. So we're going to go into the military armed forces and conflict section here and pop in his name. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of results. So let's just untick name variants. I'll take our chances with that. Just have a look what happens now. As we can see, the top 6 results are probably the best ones to look at. I will just look at the main naval records. As we can see from the transcription here, we can actually verify it's for him by his date of birth and birthplace. And also, we have their service number, which is very important. On the right-hand side, it says the Archivist, National Archives, Kew. Now, all these naval records are held at the National Archives in Kew, and as you can see there, ADM is the department, and you have a reference number and the source website, which we're going to look at in just a second. Now, this is what you can see when you look at the National Archives website, and for those eagle-eyed amongst you, you would have noticed that to view this, you have to pay £3.50, or you can get it free if you sign in. Registering with the National Archives is absolutely free. So let me just sign into this and we'll see what the records say. Okay, so here is the Royal Naval Record. And as you can see, it gives a lot of personal information right at the top there. You can see that he signed up for 12 years, which commenced 1927. Now, he did not start his naval career in 1927. If you look on the top line, it says Ganges and it says boy second class. So that's when he actually entered the Navy on the 20th of August, 1925. Now, when you first join the Navy as a boy, that is what you're called, a boy second class. And then you do your training, you work up the ranks. And then when it's your birthday, you can see that on the 2nd of January, 1927, he became an ordinary seaman. And at the top there, you can see 2nd of January 1927, he signs up for 12 years. So when he first entered, he was 5'1", 33-inch chest, light brown hair, brown eyes, and a fresh complexion. At the age of 18, that is when he would have been a ordinary seaman. He was 5'3.5", 34.5-inch chest, and of course his eye and hair color and complexion is the same. And as we look down the page, we can see all the ships that he was either sailing on or training in. If we go further down the page, we can see that his record was transferred on the 1st of January 1929, and there is a separate record which we can look at now. And we go through it the same way we did before, and let's have a look at this, and it is from May 29, and he served for quite a long time. He did more than his 12 years. Now, obviously, the war was 1939 to 1945, but he stayed on until 1949. We look on the third column, rating and discharge. He went all the way to Chief Petty Officer. So we've done newspapers, travel, and military service. And now let's look at schools and education. And there's a nice little section in Find My Past where you can find out the school records aren't that common, but they have actually added a load of apprentice things now as well. So let's look in there, see what we get. I'm just going to type in the name Gange and see what happens. We get 72 results. So let's hone that down to Southampton and see what happens after that. There's one result. Okay, who's this? Is Frederick Joseph Gange, born in 1893, so that is my grandfather. And if we look at the transcription, we can see it is for Woolston School, and the actual parent's name, Fred Joseph. And if we look at the archive, it's actually Southampton Archives, so it's worth contacting your local archive to see what else they have. Here is the actual record itself, a digitalization of it, and third at the top there is Frederick Gange, Frederick Joseph Gange, and his father, Frederick Joseph, 46 Highlands Terrace, which is in the Woolston area of Southampton. And you even have his previous school, and that was St. Paul's School, Southampton. I'm not sure if that's still there, but if it is, I'm going to look it up and find it and see what's what. So let's just go again with Gange, and we've got 4 results for Southampton, and let's see, this is just a general search, not education. There's my great-grandfather at the top there, F.J. Gange, 1857, and this is a crew list for a ship, and the ship itself is actually a yacht called the Lady Cara. And here's the original record, and we can see how much he was paid per week and how much he was given at the end of it all. That is a very interesting. You can see his fellow seamen there and everything else. A lot of information. It even has his address there, 15 Carlton Place, which matches up with a couple of birth certificates of his children. So yes, this is a very interesting, very nice document to look at. And again, we know that in this particular time, he was on the Lady Cara, crewing a yacht for somebody. So as we've seen from looking at Find My Past, some of these documents are actually at the National Archives, as are the census records, of course. So let's have a quick look into the National Archives. I will do a deeper dive, as I've mentioned a few times now. I'm going to do a deeper dive into the National Archives in a separate video. But let's see how you can start off with the National Archives. And if we go to the main page of the National Archives, so what happens if we press the search button up there? Let's have a look. We'll type in Frederick Gange. We know there are some records there, so something should happen. And this is not what we're expecting. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, those are actual archives, etc., documents that are called, that have that title. However, if you go into search catalog and enter keywords, and we go Frederick Gange, and we put a time span there we were interested in, 1890 to 1935, let's say, and then search, then we'll get some results. We can see there's a metal card of Frederick Joseph Gange. We can see that it is for my great-grandfather. And if we have a look at this, we can preview the image, which you'll get that over the top, and you can maneuver it around. But this, it looks like it's the Merchant Navy medals that my great-grandfather got when he was serving in the First World War in the Merchant Navy. Then if we look further down here, we can see my great-grandfather's naval record, which we will be looking at in depth when I do the case study for my grandfather. Now, those are some things that we've looked at, and it's not a definitive amount of things that you can find about your ancestors, but I think it's a very good place to start. The more archives you look in, not just the National Archives, but you can go to your local archives, and also there's some online archives that are not mentioned in some of these, so they're worth a look to, and I will be looking at those as well in future videos. If you are enjoying these, then please subscribe and like, and I'll see you on the next video.